Hey there, welcome to episode 213, an open conversation on psychedelic microdosing for women. I don't know, I'm just all about now getting out of the box and finding solutions that work that are less conventional because let's be honest, a lot of our conventional methods are not working. We're living in a time where ancient plant medicines are making a really strong comeback, and the conversation has really shifted significantly in the last 10, 15 years. It's on all the major media outlets. A lot of this shift is attributed to the mental health crisis. So we're going to get into the exploration around psychedelic therapy, particularly microdosing, because a lot of people are resistant to going on, large hero's journeys or having what we call a macro journey because it can be really confrontational to the psyche. And even microdosing isn't for everyone. So we're going to get into contraindications. We're going to talk about the importance of safety, setting, intentionality, and why these psychedelics are not for everyone, but can be a really profound support tool for those looking for deeper healing work. So Corey Sue Morris is my guest today. She spent over 15 years building and scaling brands. She has a master's degree from the George Washington University's Elliott School of International Affairs. She dove deeply into the health and wellness space primarily to help herself and other women fight stress and anxiety, and later happened upon psychedelic therapy. She has founded Retreat, a microdosing platform providing content, community, and coaching to psychedelic newcomers. She's a member of the Microdosing Collective and a member of Psychedelic Women, and is currently training to be a psychedelic facilitator with Synthesis Institute. Her focus is on the third wave of the psychedelic ecosystem, and she's a passionate advocate for its potential to improve mental health. We did talk a lot about how the stigma has put a lot of fear into people's hearts about adverse effects, and also noting that they are not addictive. So there's a lot to learn. There's a lot to explore in this space. So open your hearts, open your minds, feel into how this lands in your being as we explore this very controversial topic. And I would love to hear from you in our social outlets, Instagram, Shuri.Burton, and please ask to join our Stand, Speak, Shine private community on Facebook. Corey Sue, welcome to Stand, Speak, Shine.
Thank you so much for having me.
I've been wanting to do an episode like this for a long time. So when you reached out, when your team reached out, I was like, let's do this because first of all, I think it's timely. I think that people are wanting to have more alternative, let's just say alternative means to be well. I also think there's this whole consciousness movement happening around psychedelics. And so we'll get into all of that. But I think that the listeners will just be super curious about your story. So can you fill us in on a little bit about your journey and how this came to be for you?
Thank you so much for having me. So we're here to talk about psychedelics and sort of the third wave that we're presently in, present moment of this psychedelic ecosystem. My name is Corey. I'm a third-time founder. I have spent my career building companies that support women on various stages of importance. My first company was a cheeky little media company called Bitches Who Brunch, who helped women find fashion advice, travel advice, and brunch recommendations. And then I ran a marketing agency supporting female founders with growth and brand, helping them scale their dream businesses. So from brunch to businesses. And then, I've gotten a little bit more substantial with my third business. And it's really helping women primarily fight stress and anxiety and thrive. And the way that we do that is we educate people about microdosing psychedelic medicine.
Interesting. So that's quite a jump from being in more traditional spaces, let's just say, but creative. It sounds like you're a high creative. So you're always kind of looking at out of the box in ways of giving people answers or connecting people to things that work.
Yeah, I think, I'm a connector and a builder and a helper. That's sort of how I would describe myself. My whole life, I'm total extrovert, found myself, building communities of women, connecting the dots, helping them thrive and just wanting to be helpful. At first that was, somebody needs a brunch recommendation. And I was like, this friend of mine needs marketing help. And that's my background's in storytelling. And then now it's like, everyone's asking me, the mushrooms, I've heard they've changed your life. How do I do that? What do I do? How am I safe? So that's kind of how I found myself here.
Well, yeah. So how did you get the word out that you were all about that?
Yeah, I found psychedelics at the right time. I think there is no right or wrong time. I think later in life, I have been battling severe anxiety and stress and sort of this burnout cycle that's a product of being, living in New York City, being an entrepreneur in this late stage capitalism era where we have the support that we need, and found my way to psychedelic mushrooms by way of functional mushrooms. So I turned to, like many people, I turned to Eastern medicine when Western medicine wasn't serving me. My acupuncturist was the only person that was able to tell me what was wrong with me. My hormones were off, stress and anxiety, my cortisol levels were tanked, my energy levels were gone. I thought I had an autoimmune disease. Turns out my stress and trauma in my head were just manifesting itself as physical, somatic issues. And so first I started with, reishi and ashwagandha and different functional herbs. And they've been really profound and impactful in helping me heal. But if you really want to get into the trauma and work through a lot of that, psychedelic mushrooms can be a lot more transformative, both at macro and micro levels. So have been not playing around, but healing with mushrooms at various stages for the last couple of years, and have been sharing my story.
So you noticed, I'm assuming, just a really profound shift. Otherwise, I mean, everyone that I know and everyone I've interviewed on this podcast who's had some kind of path with something unconventional, let's just say, started with a healing crisis of some kind, where they just had to find out of the box answers because they weren't getting well. It sounds like that was the case with you.
Exactly right. We have a medical and care system that, it doesn't look after the whole human, and it doesn't, create a space or a conversation around the overall wellness of an individual. So that's very common, right? My mom called it hitting the wall, the crash, the burnout, whatever that is. And then you finally, start to look after yourself and you don't have a choice, right? So, I'm still on my healing journey, candidly. We all are.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
It's been transformative, to say the least.
That's amazing. So you happened upon this sort of unconventional treatment, although there are a lot of people speaking out about this. This is becoming, I would say it's almost hit mass consciousness in the sense that, with history of this, like during the 80s and 70s, it was sort of demonized and driven into criminal behavior, let's just say, and there was just a lot of misunderstanding around it. Let's talk about that part first, so we can kind of get people away from people who are just curious, but they don't understand, how is this not bad? I mean, the first thing that comes to my mind is it grows in the earth, and that's the first thing. The second thing is, and it's been used indigenously for thousands of years. The second thing is it's not addictive. So share with us a little bit more about how you explain it to people to reduce stigma.
Absolutely. To your point, the conversation around psychedelic medicine has shifted considerably in the last 10 to 15 years, just in the last 2 years, right? You have it on Oprah, CNN, Vogue, Harper's Bazaar. Oprah had an article as everybody on mushrooms without me, kind of thing that I thought. And so the conversation is rapidly changing, and that's due to the fact we're in a mental health crisis. There's 50 million Americans with diagnosed mental health conditions. That's not including the rest of us like me that are running around with undiagnosed low-grade anxiety, and everyone that was affected by COVID. And Joe Biden came out and said that he was, open to exploring alternative paths of medicine because of this mental health crisis in America, right? So you're seeing a shift in policy, conversation, public perception. Almost half of Americans were surveyed and said they're open to legalization of psychedelics. So, and that is because, like you, like me, we're all searching for natural alternatives. Psychedelic mushrooms, specifically psilocybin mushrooms, to your point, they grow in the ground. If you're in the Pacific Northwest or in South America or in a number of places, you can go forage for mushrooms. So how can something that grows in nature be harmful? And they're non-addictive. There's almost everything is addictive. Sugar, alcohol, and mushrooms have no,
they're not in that same category as alcohol or sugar.
No, you can't be addicted to mushrooms. You can enjoy the experience and want to do it again. But in terms of a physiological addiction, it's not possible. So it's kind of amazing.
So that is so interesting. So I would just direct people to the work of, tell me his name again, Rick
Doblin. He's
Doblin. Okay. Yeah.
So
I would say he's like the pioneering dude. He's been working at this for like 40 years to try to, with legalization and working through really to try to circumvent this pharmaceutical industry because they don't want to be funded by pharmaceuticals.
Yeah, MAPS is amazing. I mean, Rick has been doing this for 36 years. I was at a conference and I think it was around MDMA. They're in a stage 2 clinical trial and working towards legalization. Mm-hmm. And it was, I know some friends who worked at MAPS for a few years and they were elated, but Rick has been working on this for 30 plus years. Yeah. It's his literal life work. It's incredible. And then you have folks like Paul Stamets of Fantastic Fungi, who's, a proactive advocate for mushrooms. And obviously Michael Pollan is a great place to start if people are curious. Michael Pollan documentary, How to Change Your Mind, and then Fantastic Fungi are great ways to sort of start your mycophilia journey. Yeah. And I think one of the things I think that held me back, because I was really open with you that I did an ayahuasca journey in Costa Rica, and my listeners who follow me for a long time know that was 2 years ago. I did a podcast episode on it, and I did a little backstory on the history of psychedelics. And one thing that came to me when I was researching this, because I was in heavy criticism of this spiritually, mentally, socially, physically, in every way, shape, and form. So I just dove into researching it just for my own, even though my soul, I would say, or my heart was calling me to it. I wasn't convinced mentally that this was safe. So I did a lot of research, but one thing that came to me was, people will go do pharmaceuticals and have all of these myriads of side effects, including addiction and, lack of sleep, and even as far as like black box warnings for, even homicidal tendencies, but they won't go and research some of these things that grow naturally in the earth. And I've been like you, I've had to go into like studying Eastern medicine and a lot of these modalities that are, I think now more accepted for sure. But at the time you would have thought that I was, a witch because I've been doing these kinds of things and studying things like plant medicine for a long time, plant medicine in the form of essential oils, plant medicine of all kinds. So with it not being dangerous for addictive tendencies, with it not when I read that book, what was it called? It wasn't How to Change Your Mind. It was a different one, but he talked about something about, there's like almost no documented cases of someone dying from psychedelics. And I think the U.S. Western view perspective is so myopic. It's so narrow. People have been healing through psychedelic medicines, peyote, ayahuasca, psychedelic mushrooms. You have peyote in the Southwest and ayahuasca in Peru and Amazon and mushrooms in Latin America for thousands and thousands of years. And what these medicines do, they're from the ground and overarching, and tell me if you agree, they help you, you're more connected, you're more in tune with your community, yourself and others, you're more grounded. These things are transformative in a way that is spiritual regardless of what religion you feel. And I came into this from a very cognitive perspective. I was like, I want to heal X, Y, and Z diagnosed clinical thing, anxiety, stress, trauma. Where's the data? Like approaching things from a cognitive lens. And what psychedelics taught me is that you really can't solely approach things from a cognitive lens. There is always going to be a spiritual element. And once you experience them, you will know that inherently in your bones. Right.
Yes. I wanted to go there next. I'm glad you brought in the spiritual element, because when I said, is this bad? It was more like a spiritual judgment. It's more like a spiritual wrestle inside of me, because I was always taught about the Well, I have family members that I've lost to addiction and mental illness. And this is one of the reasons I was seeking out, I guess you could say, out of the box, unconventional methods, is because I wanted to break these family patterns that have plagued my ancestry for a long, long time, including losing a sister to suicide, losing an aunt to suicide, and all these things. So, being raised very, very religious, very conservative, getting a traditional psychology degree. I mean, going by the book with looking at how we heal. Well, healing isn't even a word that's really used in those spaces, but in religion it is, but it's only in these parameters that you heal. Otherwise, you are opening yourself up. Let's just say taking a psychedelic, what I was taught is that you're opening yourself up for so much, which I think there's some truth to that. I do think there's some truth to that. So for me, it's all about the container that you're using and the intentionality. Do you want to speak to that a little bit?
Absolutely. I think psychedelics are spiritual, and there's a really interesting study. We can maybe put it in the show notes. I don't want to butcher it, but it was about, there's a niche of clergy members that have experienced, psychedelic medicine and how it's enhanced their relationship with God. Right. So I think regardless of your spirituality, that connection piece, psychedelics set and setting. It's all about set and setting, whether it's a macro journey, psychedelic mushrooms, ayahuasca, microdosing. Your set is your mindset going into something, and your setting is your environment. And because these transformations are so profound and they shift your energy, it's so important to have the preparation work with a professional, whether that professional is a shaman, a facilitator, a therapist, to help you prepare your mind for the journey that it's going to go on, and the shift in perspectives and awareness. And then setting is really your environment, whether you feel safe at a retreat center for a macro journey, or you have a guided session, or at microdosing, which is meant to be sub-perceptual. That simple as, is my office clean, and do I have momentums and things that inspire my creativity and my heart, and safety, right? So, you're opening.
Safety is a big.
Yeah.
Safety
thing.
Yeah. The macro journey that I took in Costa Rica was in actually a medical facility, was in a highly, you could say, controlled environment. But there's also some things that can happen that don't account for that. I actually had a very pronounced transcendental experience. We did it 4 nights in a row. It's all in my episode that people can refer to. But basically, there was a lot of symbolism. From what I understand, a lot of these things are just a projection of your mind. It's things inside of you that have been hidden in your subconscious for a very, very long time that have kept you, you could say, in bondage, sick, not functioning, whatever. It's just something that's so it's almost like I call it a divine prioritization that happens when the medicine comes into you, that like prioritizes the first thing that you need to see that's keeping you from fullest expression in your life. So these things are just coming out, right? And it was just like, you could call it an ego death, you could call it a lot of things, but it was extremely profound. And 2 years later, I'm still unpacking a lot of the significance of it. But what you were saying about vetting and meeting with people, if you are doing more of a macro journey, just to be able, like, you could go on a hero's journey, you could have a hero's dose, and you could really open yourself up for some things you may not be prepared for. So I think also there's some contraindications for people who are on different kinds of medicine, medications. You shouldn't take it if you have certain mental disorders. So there's a lot to bring into that space. But let's come back to microdosing, because it's a smaller, it feels more maybe palatable to some people. And I shared with you that I have microdosed mushrooms before. I did a couple of series of them. And I'm happy to share what I experienced, but I want to know what the general expectation is around microdosing, and why people do it, why people would do that versus, let's just say, more conventional means of medication.
Yeah, absolutely. On the safety piece, there's so many considerations for women seeking a retreat. Our website is retreatmicrodose.com, and we have a really amazing article on like guidelines for vetting a psychedelic facilitator and guidelines for women going on a psychedelic retreat, like a safety checklist kind of thing.
Because women have been taken advantage of when they go to these really remote places. Yeah, I've heard so many stories.
It's so hard, right? Because you don't want to. Referrals are key, and you don't want to frighten people, but it's like anything when you're traveling in a foreign country as a woman, right? Like you want to vet your Airbnb in your hotel, and if you're, it's the nature of being a woman in this world, which is a problem that extends far beyond psychedelics, and it's frankly why a lot of women are turning to psychedelics to heal.
To heal from the damage done to the
worst is you go to psychedelic retreat to heal from your sexual trauma, and then you get re-traumatized.
Yeah.
That's have to be mindful of getting a referral. And there are so many amazing healers, but like any industry, and it is an industry, there are bad players in anything. So it's not like psychedelic retreats are bad. It's like whether you are selling stamps or selling mushrooms, there are going to be good guys and there are going to be bad guys in every industry. But back to microdosing, I think it is really much more palatable, I think. So microdosing is the act of taking subperceptual doses of any substance, but typically people are referring to microdosing LSD or more popular microdosing mushrooms, psilocybin mushrooms, which are psychedelic and they grow in the ground. And people do it for a number of reasons. Creativity is a big one. You and I were chatting about
intention with it. Yeah.
Yeah. It's because psilocybin opens up the neural pathways in your brain, kind of like set your mind alight, right? And so you get your brain firing and neurogenesis, and much like lion's mane, psilocybin is early days of showing that it can really help regenerate brain cells and get your mind firing. So creativity is a huge one. That's why all the tech bros in San Francisco are microdosing to squeak more out of their days.
Well, I heard that Steve Jobs pretty much. Did you hear that Steve Jobs is like pretty much it's come to light that he did a lot of his innovations while he was experiencing mushrooms.
I'm not at all surprised by that. I've noticed with myself, right, the way I'm a very linear thinker and, pragmatic to a fault almost, an ENTJ. And when I'm microdosing, the way I lead is entirely different. The way I approach problems is entirely different. I mean, a silly example, like I had a box, like a cardboard box that I almost threw away. And then I had like a different vase, and I basically normally I would just throw away and recycle the thing. And instead I ended up using this box to like rejigger it and cut it up and solve a problem in my house for something that I needed. And like, I would never do that. I would just be in New York, busy, recycle the damn thing and move on. And so there's silly examples like that happen to me every day when I'm microdosing. So it's like the magic of this cardboard box.
The resourcefulness, the creativity, that was my, when I did the 2 different rounds of microdosing, that was my intention, is the creativity, with my manuscript, and also starting a new business project. And I did notice an enhancement of that, and just being able to be really dialed in. And I like that you use the wording subperceptual, because they say it's not microdosing if you can really definitively feel it, to say substantially like, oh, I'm having a psychedelic experience. You should not feel that when you're microdosing.
No, I find microdosing to be more subtle than coffee, right? Coffee, my heart starts beating a million miles an hour and I'm frenetic energy. I had to stop. Microdosing helped me quit coffee and really reduce my alcohol consumption, which is an interesting benefit. Wow.
That's another thing I've heard in parallel, that people will actually use psychedelics like mushrooms to break addictions. So that not only are they not addictive in and of themselves, but people are using them therapeutically to stop smoking, like you're saying, quit some of these habits that are not healthy for them.
I mean, studies have shown that psilocybin in macro doses is proven to help with smoking cessation, alcohol use disorder, PTSD, and depression. And that's because what you were speaking of earlier, it helps pull out that trauma and shift your energy. So both with microdosing and macrodosing, you shift your energy to a higher plane and you can get out of some habits. A lot of people are coming to us for microdosing guidance to shift behavior patterns, whether you're trying to manifest a goal, reduce drinking, reduce your anxiety, focus more, finish a book. There's a lot of these benefits. And so there's the cognitive lens, right? Your brain is firing, you're working through things, but there's also the spiritual kind of feeling by, but you're literally shifting your energy into a higher plane, and you can use that to move different areas of your life in the right direction with the proper guidance.
Yeah, that's amazing. I think, when I did the ayahuasca journey, it was like having probably 3 to 5 years of therapy in like one session. And that's why it's taken a while to integrate it because of everything that was revealed, that was in my subconscious, that was begging to be explored and noticed, and lots of spiritual symbolism. It wasn't just an expulsion of ego states, if you will, or trauma. It was also like feelings of oneness, connectedness. One thread that I notice in people that are in this space is that they feel more connected to the earth. And you're talking about, we're in late stage capitalism. And so look what we've done to the earth. And I think that's why this is would you agree this might be why this is making a resurgence?
Oh, gosh. Yeah, I was a quote or a meme that I thought was quite funny, that psychedelics are like swallowing a therapist. really made me laugh. They really are transformative.
Mm-hmm. So with microdosing, you wouldn't maybe have like an ego death. Obviously, you wouldn't have like a transformational experience or an ego death or a dissolution of something super pronounced maybe. But is it more cumulative where you maybe notice it more over time?
Yeah, it's really important. Some tips. What's nice about microdosing is you go through a protocol, which is basically just a schedule. And there are a couple that are the Fadiman protocol, James Fadiman, author of Psychedelic Explorer's Guide, Paul Stamets, the Stamets Stack, and you do it for a cadence, 1 day on, 2 days off, or 4 days on, 3 days off, and you do it for maybe 6 to 8 weeks. And it's really important to look at the bigger picture. So we recommend you prepare the same way you would for a macro journey, right? Got my little journal, set some intentions for that time period, and clean up your office back to set and setting. And what's lovely is, yes, it's cumulative. So mood tracking is really helpful, working towards some goals, right? Maybe your goal is to finish your book or your book proposal, or to, finish a work of art, whatever that might be. I think setting some goals and intention for the container that you're working through on that 2 to 3 month journey, and then evaluating overall. But it really does build up. But I have noticed myself being more connected to nature, being much more present with my husband and my dog. I think I used to just like not live in my body, right? We're all so traumatized and in our heads, and no one is in their bodies. And when I microdose, I'm actually here. I'm present.
Yeah.
And I do overall, my mood improves, creatively, I work through things better. And to your point, I do think mushrooms can save the world, right? If we were all a little bit more connected, mycelium connect all of us. That's how trees talk to one another. There's mushrooms in the ground, and
the little network, the underground.
Yeah,
stuff that we learn in Fantastic Fungi. Yeah.
I just think it's really special. And they are regenerative, right? There's all these amazing studies about mushrooms helping get rid of TFAs from plastic, and mushroom, not psychedelic mushrooms, but just mushroom like cloth. They're making mushroom leather.
Yeah.
Mushrooms are awesome. I don't know if you feel that way. I clearly am obsessed. I've got a mushroom tattoo. My parents, I'm getting a mushroom tattoo, and I thought they'd be so mad at me. And they were like, we love mushrooms too. If you're in, we're in. We'll get mushroom tattoos too. And I have a very wholesome family. I was shocked to hear that. Yeah. So I'm glad they're on board as well.
It's funny. It's funny. Like, that's the other element that this brings in, is a lightness, a lightening. It's been a while since I have microdosed that. It makes me want to go back and do another round, but I was telling you before we started recording that I've had very conservative, religious, moms, come to me and just be like, oh, I heard that you did ayahuasca. I don't know if I'm ready for that, but I've been wanting to try mushrooms. I've been watching these documentaries and I've been researching, and is this okay? I'm like, Okay, well, I don't know what to do with is this okay? Because my feeling in life right now is that we're all sovereigns and we get to decide and listen to our hearts and decide because something is calling you and you're fascinated with it and it just keeps coming up. And you're, to the extent you would reach out to me, that tells me that there's a part of you that feels like you just need to give yourself permission. And so, yeah, it's an interesting thing with, I would say, more women maybe than men. Men are just like, whatever. But do you want to speak to that a little bit? Maybe the hesitancy around that.
It hurts my heart, the sovereignty of being called to something and not giving yourself permission to do that. Like there's a million things societally as women we're told that we can't do or can't be. And mushrooms have been politicized, which is super heartbreaking, right? Like in the 70s. So in the 1950s, a couple brought back mushrooms from Oaxaca, from Maria Sabina. They had a healing experience. And in the 50s and 60s, mushrooms were legal. There were already studies being done trying to prove that mushrooms could help with depression and different, healing. And then Richard Nixon came along and he wanted to throw people of color and Vietnam protesters in jail, and the common link was psychedelics. And there's a really amazing Vice article on this. Like, I am not a politician. I do love history. I'm a student of history. And it was a very tactical thing. Like, how can we throw these two groups into prison? And mushrooms and LSD were the link, right? And then they were demonized for the next 50 years. And, and so we've been told dare, and there are all different kinds of drugs. And I don't mean to be an elitist, but I do have a preference for natural ones. I'm a naturopath. I don't take anything. I'm fortunate that I don't have to, right? And so mushrooms appeal to me because they're natural. They appeal to a lot of people because they're natural and they're healing. And it's a shame that it's spun out of control, that there's so many opinions these days. And, I look at it like if Sarah from Ohio wants to do mushrooms in a safe place, she's not hurting anyone. She's trying to heal herself, and there should be a space for conversation around that without shame.
Right. Yeah. And that's why I appreciate the research being done at Johns Hopkins right now. They've been doing this huge longitudinal study. They're probably going to be integral in it becoming legalized. I do worry a little bit about it becoming legalized because I don't want special interest groups and the pharmaceutical industry to come in. And I think that's why MAPS is doing, what does it stand for? Something for Association for Psychedelic Study. What is it?
Multidisciplinary Association for
Psychedelic Studies.
Psychedelic.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, they're doing great work in keeping it clean and out of all of those special interests, because it's greedy industry, and that's what these plants are revealing to us. It's a time to come back to the earth. It's time to come back to the body. It's time to come back to nature and healing and your own conscience and your own sovereignty. And, I always laugh when people say like, oh, you were just going to Costa Rica to go get high in the jungle. I'm like, first of all, it was not a high. There were people puking all around me, removing ego stress, and it wasn't a therapeutic, fun experience in the sense, it was therapeutic, but it was not a fun experience. And it tastes so nasty. Like, I don't know how anyone would ever be addicted to that, but physiologically you cannot get addicted to it. There's a spirit and essence to these plants that hold wisdom, and I don't understand it. But you definitely experience that connection directly to Gaia or directly to Mother Earth when you are, experiencing the medicine, and it's taking you right back to what's most essential.
That's so beautiful. I couldn't agree more. And also, like, if you want to go get high in the woods, like, that's your prerogative.
That's your thing.
In fact, you're not hurting anyone. But macro journeys for psilocybin, to your point, they're not always positive. And I don't know that's the point. And I don't love this like good trip, bad trip, right? Obviously, set mindset and setting affect your mental state and your outcomes for sure. But I've had challenging parts of positive journeys, and I've had challenging journeys, and they were still transformative in a positive way. I was more grounded. more open. I was on my healing journey. So, and I think that's life, right? There will be hard times and then you appreciate the hard times better. Nothing. I love being happy. I'm a happy person, but like not every day of my life is going to be happy. And that's not the way it's supposed to be. Not every moment of your journey is going to be sunshine and roses, right? To your point, ayahuasca, you're puking. Mushrooms, you feel a little bit nauseous. And I joke with my friend, like, why do we do this to ourselves? And it's like, well, because we are actually trying to heal and show up better for ourselves and then our families and our communities. And then this radiates beyond the community, to your point around nature. If you get a bunch of people that are grounded and actually care about other people and stay connected, like it seems like a net positive.
Yeah. And it feels like the universal elements to it are connection to other people, releasing judgment both of yourself and other people, seeing the shadows both in the collective and in yourself. I've actually heard mushrooms called the golden teachers. I'm sure you've heard that before too.
It's a strain of mushrooms called golden teachers,
okay, it's
right?
A different strain.
There's different mushrooms. They look different. There's 180 different kinds, and golden teachers. Wow. I love golden teachers.
And
special.
Yeah, it's been interesting to talk to other people about, like, they just don't know what to do with it. So I want to talk about one more thing with this, and then we can go into a little bit more about protocols. But what about the it's bad spiritually thing? Like, I don't know if you were raised with religion or if you confront a lot of people that come into your space who are sort of grappling with this, like, I'm going to be infiltrated by dark spirits or something's going to open up and I'm not going to be able to close it and that kind of thing.
I was raised in a fairly open household. I was raised traditionally Christian. I think I was fortunate that my parents didn't put a lot of shame around things. So a lot of the women that come to me are coming from a place of fear and a loss of control, or am I going to get in trouble? Like that shame of like, it's bad because some authoritative figure, whether it was religious or familial or political, said it was bad. And I think you really have to like walk the logic back and create a safe space for support and community to talk about that. And I mean, you may know the religious piece a little bit better than I do, but I had to walk a lot of folks back from this is not going to hurt you. Here's the narrative. Here are the studies. Here's the historical references, and really just provide a ton of cognitive, like proven studies, and then create the space and time for them to ask me questions if they want to.
Yeah, that's great. I will actually point to people to a lot of research that's been done on how a lot of religions started with psychedelics. And that's there's people doing whole podcasts on this, people writing journal articles. It's like different sacraments that people take. There's a book called Food of the Gods or Food for the Gods or something, where he goes into the whole history of, the spiritual and religion with psychedelics. I don't profess to know if that's yay or nay. All I know is that, like you mentioned, there is something very, very spiritual about it, but it's connected to you and no one else. So it's not deferring to an external authority. Even if you have a shaman right there, their best shamans are the ones guiding you back into yourself. They're not interpreting anything for you. They're just reflecting back to you that this is about you. This is you and creator, or however you define that. And so that's what I would tell them. But what you said is great too. It's the science is there. It's safe.
And for me, going through a macro mushroom journey, I know with certainty that there is a spiritual being out there and that we are all connected through love and energy. And it is interpreted as an individual, but I don't know anyone that has had a psychedelic experience that doesn't come out of it knowing that there is a spiritual element, whether that is Jesus, whether that is mushrooms, whether that we are all connected by energy, and that energy is positive and it heals and connects us all, right? And it's not frightening. Though back to there will be parts of your journey that's frightening. That's why psychedelics are so amazing for near-death experiences and like palliative care and people on their deathbed. It's because when you go through a psychedelic experience, you come out of it no matter what, and you're like, wow, we're all connected and I am safe and held by the universe.
Yeah. I think the safety piece is what really, so it's paradoxical because safety is what we're searching for. We want to feel safe here. We want to feel safe for the afterlife, whatever. And the paradox of that is that we've been programmed that these things are not safe to take.
Right. And also that you have to, this concept of you have to do X, Y, and Z to be loved or good and therefore safe, right? I have to accomplish X, Y, and Z because I've been trained in capitalism. In religion, we have to do X, Y, and Z. Like this like idea of conditionality around love and safety. Right. Whereas that's not at all what the universe is saying. That when you go through psychedelics, you realize that you are enough as just being you, and that's amazing.
Yes, and the eternal nature of our soul, and yeah, it's just. I think let's go back to the protocols, and then we can. I know you touched on it a little bit, but I lost the name that you said that there was a gentleman, his last name, and can you speak to a little? So let's just say you go through that 6 to 8 week series. Mm-hmm. Then what do you get? Is there like a length of time that you break and do it again, or is it just a case by case basis?
Yeah, throwing out some quick terms, right? So first thing with microdosing is dosage. So your macro journey of mushrooms could be 3+ grams, 3 to 5 grams, 3 to 8 grams. 8 grams would be a lot. A microdose is 0.1 to 0.5. So you're taking 1/10 or 1/20 of a macro dose. The dosage varies by human. It's not related to sort of weight and BMI the way alcohol is. It's really, the adage is start low, go slow. So if you're microdosing for the first time and a range is 0.1 to 0.5, start with 0.1, 0.2. So dosage is the first thing, right? You are taking 1/20 of a dose of a macro journey. It should be subperceptual. The second piece we mentioned is mindset and setting. Clean up your office and your home, write down some intentions in a journal. And then the protocol is a schedule. And there are two that are really popular. One is the Fadiman protocol, and the other one is the Stamets stack. And then you would do that for a number of weeks, 6 to 8 weeks. And then you'd want to take a break, maybe a month off, and then you can repeat that for as long as you like.
Interesting. You have those suggested protocols and dosages on your website. Do you want to lead people to that?
Yeah, we have a free microdosing guide. So it's retreat, like a yoga retreat, RETREAT, microdose.com and /free guide. So we've got a great 101 primer, a little downloadable gift to help people start to learn.
Amazing. I just applaud you for being brave. And I get that you're just like a really outspoken person, which I love.
Yeah, let's talk about emotions. We'll see if, what I don't think that's not going to change. I'm pretty committed to helping people heal. And
you've probably noticed a lot of success stories, I'm assuming. Keeps you going.
Yeah, it's amazing what people will share, right? And I feel really grateful that people are sharing their stories with me, right? And microdosing macro journey helped me with XYZ, and also what people are worrying about. And I would say that, people are coming to me. It's kind of a lot of the same. It's like creativity, focus, anxiety, just generally like unhappy, heavy. And so if you're feeling any of those things, just kind of know everybody else is too. And, mushrooms are in the process of changing the world. They're not going to change your world overnight, but you can really experience lightness and a profound grounding and a shift in energy and alignment through microdosing and psychedelic medicine.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Corey. This was really enlightening for me.
Cherie, thank you so much for having me. It was such a pleasure.
So whether or not macro or microdosing psychedelics is for you, you may happen upon someone who could benefit from this kind of therapy. We call it unconventional, but back in the day, ancient times, these plants were used indigenously for a myriad of health conditions and for spiritual connectivity, as we discussed. So if you want to learn a little bit more about how to safely self-administer microdosing, or if you have any burning questions about how this may or may not serve you and what the contraindications are, you can find in the show notes where to get this free microdosing guide from Corey Sue. And that is at retreatmicrodose.com/free guide. Thank you for listening. And as always, know that you are a sovereign in your life domain. You are the master and commander of your body and have the authority to choose what goes in or out of your body. So listen to your heart, listen to your soul, listen to your gut, and know that if you're feeling called to this kind of work, it might have a place for you, if only temporarily. Have a glorious week, and we'll talk to you next time on Stand, Speak, Shine.